Let us discuss the advantages and disadvantages of cloud computing. Talking about the various advantages that this cloud computing it provides us. First of all, the backup and re-storage of data. Obviously, the organizations nowadays they are dealing with so much of data for the analysis purposes. So, storing all this data at a proper place. It is a very important advantage that cloud computing provides us nowadays. We can all the time they keep the backup of our data onto the clouds, and from anywhere and everywhere we can receive this data. So the very first advantage that this cloud computing provides us is the backup and re-storage of data. Second, improved collaboration. See, since the data it is stored on the cloud and can be accessed by anyone from anywhere. So the collaboration between the people, between the vendors, between the customers who want to view the data, who want to access the resources, the collaboration becomes them between them becomes very easy. So definitely this cloud computing it provides us with the improved collaboration between various people. The third advantage that it provides us is excellent accessibility. Obviously, since the data is stored onto the clouds, it can be accessed in a very well format from anywhere. And so it provides us with excellent accessibility of our resources, of our data. Then the fourth advantage that this cloud computing provides us is low maintenance cost. Since with if there is a person he wants to open his own business and he is not having so many funds to invest into the resources. He requires some laptops for working there. He may be needing some printer. May be needing other resources, scanners, and many more things. But these resources these are not available to him, all the resources. So these resources they can be used virtually using the clouds with a very low maintenance cost. So obviously this gives an added advantage to every person. With the help of cloud computing, the maintenance cost of the organization becomes too low. Then next advantage that it provides us is high services in the pay per use model. If we plan of using these cloud computing services, we do not have all the time to pay a huge amount for it. We can pay the amount as per our usage. It provides us with this facility pay per use model. The amount of things that you're going to use, according to that only you will have to pay. So that is another big advantage of using this cloud computing. Next is unlimited storage capacity. Since we have all the data stored on the remote servers, we do not have to worry about the storage capacity. It provides us with unlimited storage capacity. We can place any number of files, documents, videos, or audios onto the servers without being worried about the storage capacity of our devices. So this is another added advantage that this cloud computing is providing us. Then data security. The whole architecture of cloud computing, there's a separate layer we can say where the security features are being provided. So we can be assured of having this data security when we are using this cloud computing model, cloud computing architecture. Then like we have certain advantages, in the very similar way we have few disadvantages of using this cloud computing. First and foremost is internet connectivity. Suppose you want to access some data and your internet connection is poor. In that case, obviously you cannot access the resources using the cloud services. Had the data being stored onto the local devices, you would have accessed the data. But if the data is stored onto the clouds and you have poor internet connection, obviously in that case, your work will get hampered. So this is one basic disadvantage of cloud computing. Second is vendor lock-in. Vendor lock-in, since we have to avail these cloud services through some vendor, so they provide us with some lock-in period of using these services. And suppose we at some point of time try to shift from one vendor to another, so we have to fulfill their lock-in period. They provide us with certain lock-in periods. For that particular point of time, we have to avail their services only. So vendor lock-in, that means we have a dependency onto the vendor when we're using this cloud computing. Third disadvantage that we can talk about is limited control. Since if the data is stored onto our local devices, local storage devices, in that case what will happen? If the data is stored onto the local devices, so we have full control over our devices. But now we have stored our data onto the clouds, so obviously we have limited control over the data. Then chances of this being accessed by some hackers becomes more. So that is why the fourth disadvantage here is security. Though the architecture of cloud computing, it provides us a particular set of protocols for giving us the security over the resources, but still, since we are sending our data onto the clouds, the chances of data getting accessed while the data is being passed becomes more. So that is why security is another concern when we are talking about cloud computing. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of cloud computing that we should keep in our mind when we are talking about cloud computing. Now, talking about the architecture of cloud, we basically have two ends here. One is a front end, second is the back end. Front end is the client infrastructure, where the client is there, who is accessing these resources. That is known as the front end. Then we have the internet in between, via which the front end and the back end they communicate with each other. Now, on the back end, we basically have management, where we manage all the layers, all the modules of our architecture. We have another part, that is a security, where all the applications, all the modules, layers of this particular cloud computing architectures, the security of those is taken care into. Now, talking about these particular layers, or we can say modules of this cloud computing architecture, the very first one, the basic thing is application. Application via which the client and the cloud computing architecture it interacts. Then we have the second layer, which is going to be our service. Services will be provided to the clients using this service layer. Then we have the runtime layer, the layer through which the data will be accessed at any point, runtime point. Then we have the storage of data. Whatever services, whatever things we have, all of these have to be stored at a particular place. So the next layer for this architecture would be the storage layer. And at the end, we have the infrastructure layer, where we have all the resources. So these are basically 5 layers of our cloud architecture. Now, discussing these layers in detail, the very first thing that we have when we talk about this cloud architecture, front end, and the second thing is back end. Talking about the front end of the cloud architecture, it refers to the client side of the cloud computing system, from where the client will interact with the server or with the cloud computing system. Client infrastructure is a part of front end component. It provides a graphical user interface to interact with the cloud. Since we have the client, we ourselves, if we are using these cloud computing resources, so we are the clients. So we are at the front end. If we talk about this client server cloud computing architecture, so at that point of time, we are at the front end. It provides us with the graphical user interface, a proper interface which makes it very easy to access the resources using cloud computing. So the very first thing that we have when we are talking about this cloud computing architecture is the front end, which is the client end, or we can say from where the client will interact with the cloud computing architecture. Second, we have the backend. Backend refers to the cloud itself, and which is used by the service provider. The cloud itself would be referred to as the backend. Now, coming to this backend, we have different modules on this backend. The very first thing that we have here is the application. Application in the backend, it refers to the software or the platform to which the client will access. Application is the requirement of the client, that what does he want to access, which software he wants to access, or which platform he wants to access. So application would be that particular software or that particular platform that will be accessed by the client. This means it provides the service in the backend as per the client's requirement. Whatever the requirement of the client will be, it will provide the service in the backend as per the client's requirement. So the very first thing is application. Now the second is service. Service in the backend basically refers to three types of cloud-based services. We have SaaS, we have PaaS, and we have IaaS. SaaS basically refers to the software, P here refers to the platform service, and I here refers to the infrastructure service. So basically when we're talking about cloud, so it provides us with three types of service. One, dependent on the software, another on the platform, and the third one on the infrastructure. So service basically in the backend, it refers to any of these three cloud-based services: SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. These services we are going to be discussing in detail. Then we have the runtime cloud. Runtime cloud. Runtime cloud in the backend, it provides the execution and the runtime environment to the virtual machine. So virtual machine which is going to access these resources. So runtime cloud, what will it do? It will provide the execution and runtime environment to the virtual machine. Next will be the storage. Storage in the backend, it will provide the flexible and scalable storage services and management of the stored data. Storage will store all the application, all the services which can be accessed by the client. So it will provide the flexible and scalable. Scalable means you can store as much data as you want. It provides us with scalable storage service. It can be incremented, it can be scaled to any level, and it manages our stored data. Then the fifth one here is the infrastructure. So cloud infrastructure in the backend, it refers to the hardware and the software. Infrastructure here, it will refer to the hardware and the software. So that will comprise of the entire infrastructure, the hardware as well as software. So these are basic 5 layers of our cloud computing architecture. Now we have another module here, which is the management. What will management do? Management will definitely be used to manage the components. It will manage the components which are application, service, runtime cloud, storage, infrastructure. And not only these modules it will manage, it will also handle other security issues in the backend and establish the coordination between them. So management, it is used to manage all the components. Then we have the security. Security is inbuilt backend component of cloud computing. It implements a security mechanism in the backend. If we want to have a proper security mechanism, so that feature, it is being provided into the architecture of cloud computing itself. Security, it is a inbuilt backend component of cloud computing, and it will implement the security mechanism in the backend. Internet, definitely. Now in between, internet is a medium through which the client and the server, they will interact with each other, or we can say the front end and the back end, they can interact and communicate with each other, obviously using a medium which is the internet. So that is why it is being told, if the interconnection is internet connection, it is poor, so in that case accessing the resources from the cloud becomes difficult. So this is the basic cloud computing architecture. Now talking about the benefits of cloud computing, architecture. What all benefits if we have designed this particular architecture of this cloud computing? What all advantages it provides us? First of all, it makes overall cloud computing system simpler. Definitely, since we have divided this architecture into different separate layers, so all the layers will perform their own function, so it will make the overall cloud computing system simple to handle if we have a proper architecture of it. Then second advantage is it improves the data processing requirement. If we have designed it into different modules, so it will definitely improve our data processing requirement. If we have to process our data, so it will be improved if we have this proper cloud computing architecture. Thirdly, it helps in providing high security. Since we have a separate module for dealing with the security feature of cloud computing, so it definitely helps us in providing the high security. Then it makes it more modularized. Since we have divided it into different modules, so it becomes easy to manage all these modules with the help of our management module, so that we get to know if there is some error at some let us say runtime storage, runtime cloud, or at the storage part, or at the infrastructure part. So since it is all modularized, so it becomes easy to rectify those errors. Then it results in better disaster recovery. Obviously, if there is some disaster, so to recover that disaster, it becomes easy since we have divided this into different modules. Then it gives good user accessibility. We have divided it into two separate ends, the front end and the back end. So it provides good user accessibility of all the resources. Then the last one, it reduces the IT operating cost. The operating cost of managing this whole structure, it gets reduced if we are using this proper architecture of cloud computing.